This is the Open Global Mind community call on Thursday, May 1st, May Day of 2025. Much to say, much to think about. It is the first Thursday of the month, so we are in check-in mode, and everybody on the call knows what that means. So
I
I
don't.
will own. Pardon?
I don't know what that means.
You've not been on a check-in call, Alex? So check-in mode is where I don't facilitate while we're checking in.
Right.
I mute myself. Everybody steps in when they want to. We do a brief thing. As I said in the email, let's try to be a little briefer today, by which I don't mean one sentence, but I don't mean like 6 items of everything you've been thinking about. Um, and I don't interfere, so I'll check in once. And please don't reply to anybody else, and only check in once. And once we've all checked in, then we switch back into normal sort of salon style conversation.
Is that the same one where we then wait half a minute after someone speaks, or is that different?
Pauses between are really, really good, and no chat until we've all checked in.
Thank you.
And we're open to modifying this protocol. We just sort of got here. It feels like a long time ago in the dark recesses of history that we came up with this. So, Rick, go ahead. You're muted. You'll have to locate your unmute button on the hoof.
Yeah, that's it. That's fine. No, I was just waiting for you to begin. I was going to say something as a check-in. That's all.
You were going to check in. Sounds great. I will leave your hand up, and there being no other preliminaries, I will go quiet, and you can proceed.
Well, I'm going to be very brief because I have to leave at 11:30. But last night I was involved in hosting an Indivisible call, and it was about Wake Up Unwoke America. And interesting enough, they had over 300 people there. It was just unbelievable. And it was orchestrated with the Indivisible group. And this morning, I wrote a blog post, and I was trying to remember, I wrote a poem a number of years ago about truth-telling. And, I was thinking, how the hell am I going to find it? So I went to AI and just put my name and put the name of the poem, and it came up straight away. It was brilliant. So I used that poem to actually create a brief Substack article about truth-telling. And I used AI in a layered way, along with using Notebook LM. And it's an evocative article. And I was really impressed with how Notebook LM actually it took a position of neutrality and called out inflammatory language, which was the purpose of it. It was supposed to be evocative, but it was just fascinating. And there's a 17-minute podcast. I'll share it through the OGM thing if people are interested in it. But I was really impressed with the how it curated a summary of this extensive AI thing, just to capture a different perspective on the poem. So anyway, having fun playing with AI, and I'm going to use this through Indivisible, and there's a couple of people that are interested in using this resource for hosting discussions on the poem about truth-telling. I'm Rick, and I'm done speaking.
I will pass today.
May I? Right, great. Thank you. Something just worked. I've been working on something for a long time. Literally just worked. Superb. Anyway, truth telling. A bit of my background, which you know. So born in Africa, culturally British, or ethnically Greek, culturally English. I don't believe I belong to anything. And patriotism isn't a big thing for me. At best with Greek, I'd identify with Greek patriotism, but I've never lived there really. So I'm all over the place. So it always surprises me how people have that feeling, because I don't have it. I don't support anyone pro, morality, yes, but just because I'm Greek, I'm not going to support Greek things or whatever. So the thing that gets me is, and it happened 2 weeks ago, but we haven't had one of these sessions. So I just want to ask you whether you feel the same way. The British Minister of Defense, Heath or something like that. He was in the Parliament, and he gave a speech about the Russia-Ukraine thing. Now, this is not a Russia-Ukraine thing. The topic is Russia-Ukraine. So his speech was, and I'm paraphrasing just to emphasize what it was, which said, the Russians are untrustworthy. Okay, that's fine. They declared a 30-hour truce. So that was the truce that just went by. But 30-hour truce, and they don't stick to it. They have they have attacked Ukraine over 10,000 times with missiles in the last 3 years, blah, blah, blah. So on he went. So the point that I want to get from you, your thoughts at some point, is he starts with a statement. He proposes to prove the statement, but then he doesn't say anything that proves the statement. He just goes on everywhere else. That really annoys me. It really, truly annoys me. The news cycle does this time and time again. So my question is, do you guys feel it? Do you guys think it's normal? Do you think it's acceptable? Do you think it's because seems the whole world seems that's the news cycle. That's how they do it. Something they want to tell you to convince you of. We're going to prove to you that's the case, and then talk about something totally different that loosely relates. I don't know if anybody identifies, but it really gets me because I'm not patriotic, so I can see through the. I'm not going to just say, oh, whatever. Anyway, pause for thought. Thank you.
I think the silence here demonstrates how hard it is to figure out what you want to talk about, because there's just so much going on, and it's just overwhelming. Yeah, so I was at a climate tech meeting yesterday here in Bend, and met some really interesting people from the Oregon State University and different local groups. And they're really ambitious about building a climate hub here in Bend. They want to attract the city for the entrepreneurs and startups. But so that's sort of a ray of hope in the middle of all this. But when you look at these crazy discussions on LinkedIn and other social media that I'm not in, there is such massive upheaval and also confusion. I mean, everybody wants to have this administration succeed in redirecting the corporate machines to be more considerate towards the populations they're based in. I mean, basically, U.S. international companies just basically abandoned the country, and with a total disregard of the population and the people that created the foundation for their success, and the political environment that allows companies to thrive like this. But when you look at, so there's on the one hand, it's starting to formulate a strategy in a sense of it's not really other countries we're fighting with, it's the companies that need to come back to the US and so on and so on. But that wasn't presented that way when Trump originally started talking about how other countries are ripping us off. So there is so much confusion, you can't even really explain it, right? I mean, there is no meta-level explanation out yet of where we are and how this is all transpiring, sort of slowly evolving. But what characterizes it the most is this meanness, and the cruelty of the way that people talk and so on, and the total disregard to the impact. As I'm sort of getting closer here in Bend, when I'm talking with the Meals on Wheels group and some soup kitchens and food banks and so on, and they're all terrified, because I mean I mean they're being threatened with basically being demolished, and then what, right? I mean, you have, even in a small town like Bend, I mean, so the family kitchen, which is sort of a soup kitchen, they serve 20,000 meals a month. That's a lot of food going out to homeless people and to people who are on the margins of society. So that's, I think, is a profound shift, in I mean, sort of a showing the wounds in our society. When you reopen collecting student debt from people who are 50, 60 years old, even to the point of garnishing their social security benefits to repay some student loan they were never able to tackle in their entire lifetime. I mean, the cruelty of all that is crazy, not even considering the economic impact when you take money away from people that will be immediately withdrawn from within from the economy, right? I mean, you take $100 away from someone who is on the margins, and then they stop buying food, or something comes out. So it doesn't make any sense from a macroeconomic perspective, and it's a horrible way to interact with people. So yeah, so this transition has so many moving parts. I think it's really difficult to sort out your own thoughts about it, and to know where you stand with it, and how you should respond to it. So it's a transformative period, and all you can do is hope that somehow it will sort itself out into something semi-constructive, and carrying us forward and into a realignment that has our society and civilization really continue to function.
I'm physically far away from everyone, so I'll take another perspective on things, and I'll just introduce a couple of things that are working for me these days, hopefully with positive outcomes for society. As I think I mentioned earlier, I'm a member of something called the Imaginary Institute. It's a sort of offshoot of the Free University in Brussels. I went to Brussels last week for 5 days, and 2 of the days were 2-day sessions with the Imaginary Institute. And I led a workshop there about imagining what a new societal contract or intergenerational pact could be like for 2035, 10 years from now. And it's something that worked quite well with a group of artistic people. There were 10 people, 8 of whom were artists, performing art and sound art especially. And I'm hoping to find other groups to test the methodology so that people can start thinking about what a new societal pact, intergenerational pact, could be for the next decade, because we're certainly in need of one. I triggered the conversations about it with the famous quote, it's much easier for some people to imagine the end of the world than to imagine the end of capitalism. And if people can't imagine the end of capitalism, we sure need more imagination in the world. That's one thing that's on my mind these days. And another is born out of a conversation I had this morning with 4 people in Sweden who are very interested in rethinking what education or learning could be for the next decade, especially for primary and secondary school people, students, teachers, and we are looking at putting together a proposal for some kind of funding where we would use methodologies like positive cartography to work with school principals to find out what needs are not being met of kids, what needs are not being met in the system. And the idea would be to start with Sweden, and then there's some people in Japan who are also interested. So start small, start local, create good examples, and learn what works and doesn't work. So those are 2 positive things that are shaping my coming days at the moment.
Hi, everybody. Talk about Sweden brought up a memory of a podcast with Nora Bates, and she was talking about a time, and I think it was the middle of the winter, and power went out, and she realized how all the technology around her was just totally useless, and had to adapt to that. So now there was just a major power outage in Spain and Portugal. And I listened to a podcast, and people were trapped in trains and elevators. And I mean, ultimately, we have to be prepared for anything, and but not to go overboard. But I think just becoming aware of our dependencies is important. And software, too, is a huge dependency. The world cannot function without software running correctly in many areas of our lives. So, and I was playing with electronics, and I realized, oh, yeah, just getting a simple electronic circuit to work correctly, there's so many things that could go wrong. And we're depending on all these things to work right. So it's just sobering. Just wanted to bring that topic up along with everything else that's going on in the world. Don't want to depress anybody, but we have a resilience as human beings. Like, think about the Amish. They could live without electricity and grow food and take care of animals. I think there are things we could learn from cultures that are making this work. And Kevin may want to follow up. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I leave tomorrow for 2 months in Spain and Portugal. I expect things to work better there than they do here. But probably the interesting part of it is that we don't know where we're going to be when we come back. decided not to get a lease on an apartment here in Asheville in the River Arts District because they were just being kind of jerks. And you know, we might stay another month in Portugal, or we might get a year's lease or something. There are projects we might go do, and so, you know, I'm leaving the business to younger employees, and I'm not completely sure they'll come through. And you know, if they don't, they don't. You know, it's there's a real market opportunity around what we do, but I'm too old to do it. So and Rosalie doesn't want to do it. But so embracing uncertainty is kind of where we are. We're getting on a boat in Miami, going across to Barcelona. So it'll be like almost 2 weeks at sea. And I like crossings. It's just you and the ocean. We're working on a book, but you know, embracing uncertainty is I think, you know, where you need to be now. We don't know what the future is, and so we're sort of really, you know, we don't have a place to live when we come back. I mean, we could boot people out of our Airbnb, but you know, it's kind of nice to just not know. You have to decide that it's okay not to know.
I'll pass.
I'm there's that old saying, the sound of the other shoe dropping. And globally, economically, it feels like we're at a moment where we might, if the plot goes as the plot seems, hear the other shoe drop, which means there might be a sharp, quick, massive contraction of global economics, of GDPs, of a whole bunch of other stuff. I saw a couple of articles recently that were warning that this is just looming. That if you look at the supply chains, if you look at contracts, if you look at what sort of happened as a result of the tariff war, that's going to happen. And that blends for me with another thought, which is what exactly does it take for people to change their minds about anything? Does it take a lot of pain? Does it take something beautiful on the horizon that they want to like change to? I don't know. I've got my amateur models of change in my brain, but might things break enough that somebody can say, hey, this Trump policy is a huge rug pull. It's basically like you've bought into a scheme that has taken away a lot of the things that you counted on and relied on and needed to have, which we might have redesigned in a more peaceful way, except third thought, seems like the world is really bad at redesigning things that don't work. And this is one of the major frustrations and problems, that institutions get inertia, momentum, defense mechanisms, and they're really hard to change, which causes this like global colic of trust and ability to get things done. So I'm really interested, Hank, you've spent decades helping people reimagine their futures and come up with some ways of doing it. I'm very interested in, as you all have seen over time, how do we figure out the best of the old and the best of the new and create a little map that people can borrow and enhance, to make this better? Because the major policy advocates have not done the best job of this. None of them really that well. So with that, I'm complete, and we only have a couple people who haven't participated. I'm going to assume Gil is under drill, unless he shows up in the chat or jumps in. But there we are.
Is this a check-in day or?
You are correct, Mark. So we're toward the end of our check-in round right now.
I've been paying attention a lot to activism and, the rules for radicals and basically how people protest and organize. My mother protested with Cesar Chavez when I was a kid. And on the quote unquote left, I hear voices saying protests are really working. And certainly there are many of them. I've heard people like Rebecca Solnit and others basically say, yeah, this is the organizing that from the bottom up that needs to be done. And, go out and march, create a sign. Faced against what we can likely all see as huge corporate billions of dollars against many things. It seems rather silly sometimes. I've made my position about certain uses of AI vocal, and the paper today, the Hearst San Francisco Examiner, AI could be thirstier than we thought, using much more water. And here in San Francisco, there were a few protests outside of AI saying, stop it, just stop it. They weren't very big, and I couldn't go, but it's not AI that's the problem. It's the people who are maximizing their advantage and to hell with everybody else. That part of human nature is what I try to imagine, that the people that aren't activists, I don't have time, I'm too busy, nothing's ever going to change, they're too powerful. It's a matter. There's a great book that I have, Undoing the Silence, basically, how to not be silent, how to be a voice that is, certainly the book is an activist voice, to look at injustice and say, this is unjust, stop it. That does work, but it's not where the resources of organization, of getting people together, of whether we use a narrative or not, or facts based or not, the trillions of gallons that are going into cooling data centers, well, not trillions, but I forget how many, but not to apocalyptically exaggerate, but shall we watch another TV show, or shall we call our friends and say, hey, let's write to our congressmen, let's call them, let's call the senators, even the senators that are on the other side, and say, look, this is too much. Do your job. Be the checks and balances on really, really bad ideas and people who intentionally cause this dismay, confusion. You know, heard many times that the cruelty is the strategy. And how do we resist cruelty? Here in California, we have a little bit of a buffer. There are the systems of government that are fighting back, but pink slipped San Francisco Unified School District staffers await fates. The people up at UCSF are losing their funding for all kinds of research in bird flu and COVID and cancer and other things, leukemia. It's what appears to me to be a power grab. And of course, underlying that is the resource grab to say, hey, we don't need these things. We're going to just maximize our wealth and to hell with everybody else. Now, what can I do? What can we do is imagining a better future, going to find employment for a lot of these people who are being fired, in my view, unnecessarily, but a lot of people are heads down and ducking for cover, alone, or in couples or families. Yeah, like many people, I'm just hanging in there. That's my check-in. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, with that, everybody has checked in. And we can shift to conversation mode. So let's do that. Wherever anybody'd like to start.
Can I start?
Please.
Words most of the time. Klaus, my heart goes to you for what you said, but I think there's one thing we should all know. I don't know whether to say this. There's a very crude Greek expression along the lines of they gave him the job to do and he went on and destroyed the building. Think of it scatologically. It's kind of something there. Very politically correct joke as well, or saying. So in answer to this government, your government, you're saying what they're doing, you have a person that never was endowed with, I don't want to say sympathy, but he has certain values. He's run a company and he thinks he can tell someone this, tell someone that, and the system below him will sort things out. It's not happening like that. It's chaos reigns below him. And I haven't seen anyone or any institution, and everybody thinks, oh, we must stop this from happening, rather than how are we going to make this work without just doing the same old thing, which is legalistic and everything else. The point I'm trying to make is they are moving. So Trump and his logic or whatever is getting feedback. They think this is not working. And the worst part of it is in politics, you can never say sorry or I made a mistake, oops, or whatever. So they're kind of cheering, but causing more chaos, if you know what I mean. And I don't know how that's going to correct itself because that's the system we have. Either the guy gets it kicked out over the next couple of years before the midterms, or you have to wait 4 years and something else happens, or something in between, which is even worse. But I do think that we ignore the fact that people go, oops, this is too much. And then they make things worse rather than better. On the war issues, Eric, it is my belief that everybody, at least in Europe, wants war. The thing is, we're not going to have a war until we can stop the missiles. Because when the war starts, and there'll be a battlefield line, pretty much like Ukraine, the people shooting at each other, or whatever. But the real problem is the missiles that go past and bombard your electricity supplies and everything else. The West cannot survive, as you said. We cannot survive. If we have a war with anyone, there is no way we can stop their missiles. Missiles are bypass everything. Just the Ukraine example is an example of that. Because remember, in Ukraine, the Russians haven't gone full bore yet. It's a military operation. What is it? It's called SMO, Special Military Operation. It's not war. They haven't started, or they never have intended to. Otherwise, people wouldn't be able to catch a train to Kiev. Literally, it will all be demolished. So my belief is until they get the laser technology or whatever other technology they have to stop the missiles from coming across, we cannot have a war. We will not survive, the West. I'm not saying Russia or whoever else will not survive, but I'm talking about us. Everything's electronic, everything's cash payment, electronic payments. I don't see how they're going to make it work without electronics. And that's the first thing that goes in a big war like that, before even you go to nuclear. I could carry on with others, but I'll let others discuss other things. But my full sympathy to Klaus. I think we have to wait for the worst to happen and then get out the other side of it. And I'm not sure war will happen yet because of what you said. Big war then.
Yeah, exactly, Alex. Very interesting. And just the whole Ukraine situation has struck me how quickly a city can be turned into rubble. I remember historic pictures of Grozny, and I was like, wow, I hope that never happens anyplace. And now my frame of mind on that has shifted dramatically. It's like, wow, you can park some trucks outside the city and reduce a city to that relatively quickly. Klaus, please.
Yeah, I mean, Hank touched on some points of governance, right? So capitalism as a form of governance, and the United States right now has fallen under this idea of wanting to run a society, a civilization, an economy with very limited governance. But that has never worked. I mean, throughout the Middle Ages, commerce always had to be regulated. Now, if you go back into like the Dark Ages, the churches used to control the markets. There was a marketplace and the church controlled it and provided fair access. And then there were rules of no violence and all of this within the marketplace. And so they protected commerce. And so and nothing has changed in the human psyche where today you could have free commerce unprotected because it's predatory in nature. So when you look at today's regulatory frame in the United States, you have very little protection for small businesses. I mean, the moment somebody gets more successful, you get taken out pretty much. And now it's not as brutal as in Russia, where somebody comes over and says, this is a really nice business, you wouldn't want something to happen to it, so why don't you hand it over to us? It's a little bit more subtle here, but it's basically, there's a point where it gets really difficult to grow beyond a certain size. And so the rules, and of course, I'm in the food business. I mean, try to get into the meat market in the US. It's impossible. I mean, they have taken out all the slaughterhouses. You want to process an animal, you have to truck it 100 miles to a USDA approved facility that is owned by one of 4 corporations that control the entire meat market, 90% of the meat market. And it's not that you have the choice between 4, because they have carved up the territory. So there's one that is available to you within this range. And guess what? Who controls the prices on what you're going to get for your animal? So to change that requires opening up the regulatory frame. It requires a radical rethinking of allowing capital to dominate. Then you have trillions of dollars floating around looking for investment. I mean, how do you deal with somebody who has $2 billion in the bank, right? I mean, what's the point? And so the distribution of wealth has become so crazy unequal that it just guarantees this continued monopolization of all physical assets. So that's really where change is required, but then no one wants to touch it. And this current administration would be the last one to touch it. When you see all the billionaires lined up, during the inauguration. So yeah, and of course, now never has this changed without breakage, right? I mean, whether that's the farmers' revolt during the Middle Ages or the French Revolution, and so I mean, it always had to come to the point where, okay, let's take these guys out and start fresh, and then the cycle repeats. So and there is no awareness, right? There is no when you think, Peter Thiel and Musk, who have such an inordinate influence over the current political process, they're completely oblivious to understanding any kind of historical precedent and the nature of man and all of that. So yeah, I don't know where. So you need basically a bottom-up, revolution. You need a bottom-up empowerment of people who want to connect with one another. I call it the coalition of the willing. You have to bring people, you have to create a chain where people connect and rebuild, from the base on up. But boy, it's a crazy task.
I just wanted, Klaus, totally agree. I just want to mention that the extension of what you said is, I think a lot of all this talk about how the US administration at the top is behaving right now is protecting its dominance in capital. Exactly everything you said has been in the US. So what they're doing now is trying to protect that from everybody else around the world that's growing and getting capital and money, because they are competing now. And a lot of the tariffs and everything are, unfair practices or whatever. No, they've got as much money as the US capitalists now do, and they don't like that. So I'm not saying it solves any problem. It doesn't. I'm just saying the problem actually gets bigger, because now you consider the other people, other countries that are big enough.
Thanks, Alex. Doug, it's good to see your name. We just finished our check-in round and we're just in regular discussion right now, but if you'd like to check in, we'd love to hear from you. Hope you're doing well. And I will head back into the conversation. Oh, there. Good. How are you doing? Where are you on the planet?
Where am I? I'm back in California from
No way.
Malaysia. And basically, I'm not doing very well on the medical side, but totally predictable by this weird disease I have. I feel pretty good, actually, for the most part. The problem is walking, because the protein has attacked the nerves that go to the legs. But I'm in good spirits.
Thank you, Doug. You sound good. So hard. When did you come back to the US?
About a week ago.
Oh, so just recently. Oh, how are you finding it?
The US?
Yeah, you've been away for a bit.
Fragmented, crazy. A complicated mess.
Agreed. Agreed.
And
Thank
part
you.
of it is dynamics. If you have a large system that starts to come apart, all relationships are affected and become less potent than they used to be. So we live with a high input of diagnosis about the problems and a decreasing sense of the power to do anything about it.
I wanted to pick up the power outage that we mentioned earlier. And I'm on a list that has a few really arch conservative folks on it, one of whose immediate response was, yeah, it's the renewables problem. They wave around and they took down the grid. He was basically immediately like knee-jerk saying it's the renewables. And then somebody else who actually knows what happened inside the grid was like, well, actually, no, here's the set of things that seem to have set this thing up. But then I thought, if we're getting, and by the way, like the day before this outage started was the day when Spain registered 100% of renewable energy usage or something like that. They had hit this milestone that they wanted to hit. And then I'm thinking about the grid and grid redesign as maybe an opportunity, because if, as we're also talking here, decentralization is one of the answers, energy is one of those things that is very easily decentralized, except for the barriers of how the grid works. And there are now microgrids, and there's microgrid software. And somebody pointed to a company, I'll find it in Australia, that actually has like really intelligent microgrid software. But if the power network is going to be overwhelmed by new forms of energy, then let's redesign the protocols of the power grid to allow for the extreme distribution of energy. Because as we talk about how much energy AI uses and all these other kinds of things, I don't think anybody's accounting for new arrangements of how energy gets collected, distributed, and reused. And we're not that far from energy too cheap to meter from PV, from solar. Like the cost of solar has been plunging for decades. It's a remarkable story of technological advancement. And so I'm just wondering, how far away might we be? And I don't know if we have any power experts in the room, but how far away might we be from a decentralized adaptive grid that allows that example to lead other examples of successful decentralization? It seems like low-hanging fruit to me. And by low-hanging fruit, I guess I don't mean easy to pick. I just mean it would make a very nice sort of kind of global example for how this might be done better.
Sadly, guys, I'm not an expert in this, but I happen to know a bit about it. I'll tell you why. First of all, just a general observation. There's been a lot over the last 2 or 3 years about this grid redistribution. The point of view is from the UK, and the lack of, the central government wants it to happen, but it's not happening quickly enough or anything enough. For some reason, magical reason, I suspect it's who someone spoke about Klaus's logic. What Klaus said is the entrenched people. However, my best friend here in this world is in the following business. He buys batteries from China. And when we say batteries, we talk about $500,000 to $3 million batteries. The whole reason, and he's installing a few around Europe and one in Texas, would you believe? And I'll tell you the one in Texas, he's installing it next to a cryptocurrency factory warehouse thing. Strange things, aren't they? But basically, he buys batteries that can supply, I don't know, a whole city for I don't know how long. You know, they're like come in containers. These are batteries already pre-made in China, and they come in containers. And they get fitted and linked onto the grid. And when the power's cheap, they load up. And when the power's expensive, they pump it out. So all I want to say was something is happening. However, I'm not sure if the interest, because I'm always suspicious, the special powerful interests want it to happen as quickly as it could. But I've got no proof of that. I just don't see it quickly enough. And I have personal experience from this guy that does this, stores power from solar panels to sell a more expensive art nighttime. And each battery costs $500,000 to $3 million, which I think sounds impressive. And it goes to China. That's also something else.
There are lots and lots and lots of kinds of battery, including pumped hydroelectric batteries. And when I was way younger, I had a project out in the province of Argentina where they took me to a job site. And this job site had already been working for like 10 years. They were digging a huge tunnel under a mountain from a lake in an area that had a nuclear power plant where projected demand, the nuke wasn't going to be able to meet projected demand. So they dug a huge tunnel, a tunnel big enough that one of those large excavator trucks could drive into it, down under the base of a mountain. Then they drilled up a not quite as large tunnel, and they put Assia Brown Boveri turbines in this chamber underneath, which would be reversible. So overnight, when demand for energy went down and the nukes were working away, you would pump water up to an artificial reservoir that was being built. And then during the day, when demand spiked, you would reverse the turbines, let water come down and generate energy. It's like, and this was a 15 to 20 year project, pretty expensive, but out in the middle of Argentina, of nowhere. So probably it costs less there. And I got to kind of walk across a plank across the chute that went down, which was a little scary. I don't think I would ever do that now. But I was really impressed at the scale of a battery, that you would do all of this work over more than a decade to just build a big battery. And there are many, many, many other kinds. There's a set of batteries out there, technologies that basically have huge blocks of concrete that you raise in a silo, and then you just lower the concrete like a pendulum in a grandfather clock. You lower the concrete and it gives you back your energy. There are pumped hydrogen storage tanks. There are, I don't know, any number of crazy ways to store energy, most of which we haven't plumbed very well and connected wisely to the grid. But batteries, like the things we think of as batteries, it turns out it takes an awful lot of batteries to power a city for any length of time. Like if you're doing battery backup, you're going to get a couple hours, maybe a couple days out of that for a pretty amazingly large battery bank. And it doesn't seem to, from what little I know, it doesn't seem to be like the longer term strategy for evening out. The Dunkelflaute is the name the Germans have given this. Dunkelflaute is the vagaries of weather and sun and wind when you're trying to balance out natural stuff. Alex, did you want to comment more?
Yeah, I just want to say I misspoke when I said it powers something for a city for so many hours. It won't power a city. It has to be massive. It's not viable for that. I don't know what it's viable for, but it is not for a city. Unless you talk about the technology you mentioned, I don't think any number of containers would power a city anytime soon.
Yeah, thanks. Anybody else? And it doesn't have to be about energy. Take this in any direction we would like. Hank.
Well, I'll take it in another direction because I have to leave the call early. Jerry, you asked a question of me out loud. Obviously, a question to everyone. How do people get to change their minds, and what kind of experience do I have or do we have helping people to think about the future? So the short answer is that positivity works better than negativity, and that a sense of opportunity is better than a sense of urgency. Now, those are lessons I've learned in getting people in the civil service and sometimes in consortia with civil service, government, and academia to think differently about the future. But the other thing I wanted to put into the conversation. Well, earlier I put in the chat the dramatic way of the ancient Greeks. It's called the comedy. The sex strike of the women.
Lysistrata.
Yeah, the sex strike of the women who wanted to end the war of the city-states. But in just a second here, in the more recent days, there was a singing revolution, as some of you may be aware of, in the three Baltic states. And it took several years, but eventually the people of the country, in singing patriotic songs in reply to the Russians, who wanted to make certain that the communist regimes of the Russians would stay in place. And it took several years, but more and more people took part in them. I've got a long quote here, which I can't add at the same time. So let me just.
There's a very nice documentary titled "The Singing Revolution"
Yeah,
about Estonia.
it's a wonderful thing. At various national festivals, the Russians wanted to have no patriotic songs sung, but there were so many people at the festivals that no one was able to stop them from singing. And in 1989, 100,000 people joined hands, leading across all the three Baltic states and singing their national songs. It can be done. Strikes by women may have effect. Voices of children may have effect. The positive impulse of singing patriotic songs might work. There were flower revolutions in Portugal in the last century. Positivity seems to work better than negativity. And I'll just make one last comment, also building on Eric, the power outage, and what you said as well, Jerry. In the Dutch newspapers today, there were columns which said that young people in Spain and Portugal, when the power came back on, talked about being transported to another planet. It was as if they were on Mars, not being able to communicate using their cell phones. So they were forced to talk with other people or to even read books. So strange things can happen when the power goes out. And I'll leave it at there, and I'll have to leave the call in another 5 minutes, but thought I'd put that on the table.
Thank you, Hank. And I was going to ask you what your favorite examples or favorite case studies are of large-scale change from positivity, but you just gave some about nation states. Do you have others that aren't about overthrowing the Soviets? You're muted.
No, that's the one that comes to mind at the moment, but I'll dig into it and try to come with some other examples for next week's call.
Thank you. And one of us might ask an LLM that question. Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, I've had some experience in utility scale photovoltaics and nuclear power. When I worked for PG&E Nuclear, Diablo Canyon made $2 million a day in electricity. And I just posted and they have a large BESS system, battery backup. And there was a fire here about 45, maybe 60 miles away in Moss Landing along the beach, the lithium battery fire of February. And Orange County and I think Riverside County, a couple other counties have asked for a 2-year moratorium to evaluate the safety of large-scale battery backup systems. There was there still is a movement of taking oneself off the grid, and very small scale off-grid decentralized power, whether it's cogeneration, whether you buy a diesel engine, or an engine that runs on liquefied or natural gas, basically. In rural areas, I see that happening a heck of a lot. And farmers putting solar cells and doing methane generation, basically off the grid type decentralization. The grid is very complex. I don't think anybody understands the grid, any one person, any one country completely understands the nonlinearity of grid electricity. And I've been to several conferences. We're just doing the best we can to try to keep it up and try to keep it going. It was interesting back in the 80s. They predicted that electric cars would be taking a heck of a lot of the benefit that PG&E at least got from people really doing great jobs in conservation and using a lot less electricity, a lot less gas. I don't have anything, definitive to say in terms of a vision that could, like Jerry said, AI. There's been a lot of AI that's been, somebody hired me to do some AI with solar for off the grid, and that was their business line, that basically, with AI, with solar, very commercial solar batteries, very small things like $300, $400 solar generators that included a battery that was enough to power a number of home appliances. Your refrigerator is very important, some communications, to basically have a turnkey package where if you had enough roof space, you could basically attempt getting off the grid if you were very careful. But grid scale management, and certainly the difficulties with huge fire and hydrogen fluoride allegedly used in the construction of the batteries, leaking out into the Moss Beach community. People were really freaked about that, and they still continue to be. That's it. Thanks.
Thanks, Mark. That's really helpful. And I added best to my brain. I didn't have that term. Didn't know about it. Other thoughts or other directions? Mike, good to see you. We finished our check-in earlier. Thanks for joining.
Apologize for being late. I was listening to an absolutely fascinating lecture on how the personalities of tech and media companies affect their research investments and corporate performance. There's a fellow named John Oliver in the UK who's done some pretty serious analysis on this.
Not the John Oliver of Last Week Tonight?
Not quite as funny, but almost as interesting.
Damn. Thanks, Mike.
Mike, could you give us a little précis? Here in the Bay Area, being a technologist, there's a lot of personality out there.
A lot of personality. The interesting thing was that the only determinant that really mattered was age, and then sector. Obviously, if you're a traditional media company like Disney or Comcast, you don't have to invest as much in leading edge technology as Tesla and some of the social media companies. But those were the determinants. He was very disappointed. It was kind of a negative result, particularly because there were little projects. People had done little analysis or analysis of small data sets, 30 companies or 40 companies, and they had come up with all sorts of grand conclusions. But he actually found after he finished his work that somebody had done a 7,000 company assessment across all sectors, international, and came to the same conclusion he did, that for research spending, it doesn't much matter who the personality is in charge of the company. For a lot of other things, it does. I mean, obviously, if you have a psychopath in charge of the company, they will make major bets and sometimes destroy the company. And if you have a narcissist who spends all their time trying to get on the cover of Time magazine or a speaking slot at Davos, they might not be paying attention to what's happening on the factory floor.
Well, luckily, those are fictitious, hypothetical kinds of conjectures you're making.
Exactly. Just
luckily, the wealthiest people on the planet don't fall into those categories.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Just those are scenarios that have no relation to real people.
Yeah, just kind of flying a thought.
But thanks for asking. I'll see if I can find. He has a book coming out called Corporate Trauma. And he's actually looking at situations like BlackBerry, which in 2011 suddenly saw all their profits evaporate, and how the corporate culture changed from innovation, innovation, innovation to risk avoidance, risk avoidance, risk avoidance. So that was another piece of the talk that was quite good. But
I do not wish having the name of a famous comedian in common with your name on anybody for Google purposes.
Yes. Well, I speak from some experience. There's a I don't know if anybody watched Mystery Science Fiction Theater 3000.
Mystery Science Theater, yeah, MSK.
You remember the name?
MST.
The space janitor was Mike Nelson.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It's really confusing.
Doug is nodding his head. He must be a true fan.
It's really confusing because I Googled John Oliver mergers or whatever, and I get a John Oliver who is the comedian, and his team dive deep into corporate consolidation and its ill effects for us as consumers.
He does. Yeah, he does the depth pieces. Yeah, John Oliver, the comedian, who used to be a correspondent for whatchamacallum, Jon Stewart. Jon Stewart used to be one of Stewart's correspondents, spun off his own show and does serious, funny, serious research on topics like this as well.
He just did an amazing little 20-minute segment on how tariffs really work and why Trump is being stupid. And it's by far the best critique and analysis out there. I'll put a link to that.
Thank you.
John Oliver, I'm talking about, is at Bournemouth University, and I'll put his LinkedIn profile up.
Beautiful. Thank you.
I had a friend named Tom Holland, and he got tons of thank you, Spider-Man, on Facebook, and he was pretty funny at responding.
IBM, there were 15 of us, and we all got each other's email, and it was sometimes quite embarrassing. The best part, though, is my first wife's name was Ann Johnson. And so we would check into a hotel, and the clerk would go, okay, we'll put you in the room next to John and Jane Doe. Wink.
Or did they think that you were using aliases?
Exactly.
I think of myself as a enterprise cultural anthropologist in my previous software career, and certainly there's a lot of stakeholders that need to work all together to create a new system or initiate cultural change, and a lot of that falls often on the software developer. we need to blah, 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 this company, blah, blah, blah. We need a new software system to control the people. And that's like, no, it's not going to work that way. where the people who are doing data entry say, if you change this, the company's going to fail. And the top corporate folks are going, we need to change this. And navigating that balance between the different cultures within a company, because there are many different cultures at different layers within almost every organization. Different teams have different ways of working that don't necessarily have a synergy with the other teams at a certain level or higher level or lower level. And it's that kind of patient organization and slow change that builds up a system that's so easy to tear apart and create chaos. And certainly what I think of a punk rock type of tear it all down kind of mission is just completely unaware of how slowly these things take for people to really understand their work and to organize together in a way that creates, if not synergy, then simply just not getting in each other's way. And to see the kind of firings and the loss of such rich experience in what I see, and I could be wrong, corporate greed or the billionaire greed. This is not a term of art that I have to employ there, but having been working with CEOs and the data entry people and the people in between, it's frightening how easy it is to break. And Mike, I'm very interested in that article. Thank you very much.
Thank you both. We've got a little over 10 minutes left. Any afterthoughts or new thoughts, or if there are none, we can wrap early. Mike.
Just wanted to, I don't know if people saw the email that I circulated about 3.5 minutes before this call started, but there is an absolutely profound 15,000 word article on how to think about AI, the evolution of AI, and particularly AI policy. By far the cleanest, clearest, most useful piece on AI that I've read by non-technologists. It's in Washington, we have all sorts of people who have retooled themselves and are now AI experts. These guys got it right. I don't know if there's any way to get them on the call. They would add a lot. They wrote the book AI Snake Oil, which is actually not as negative as it sounds. It's very much this is what's really going on. This is what you know. This is how we should approach the threat of AI and the opportunity of AI.
So Sayash Kapoor and Arvind Narayanan?
Exactly. Do you know either of them?
No. And can you point us to the article? I'm looking through my email and I don't see something from you to the list about this. I'm just wondering if you could post the article to the chat, so we all have it.
I'm here.
Thanks. Doug, go ahead.
Yeah, back to the conversation about personality. It's a pretty murky subject for sure, because human life is so incredibly complex. But two handles to get a start on it are to ask the question, where does a person's living come from? How do they make their living? And the other is, how do they make their loving relationships? And if you understand those two things, you'll understand a lot about a person.
It seems like follow the money is an old trope about the first thing you mentioned. So
Well, you got to watch out that some people get a living in ways that do not involve money. So how you make a living is a broader question.
yep, yep. Thank you. Other thoughts?
I have a question. I'm really, truly, totally impressed with how you guys read so many things, see so many things. I have no idea how you do it. Literally, I cannot cope with the emails you guys send. I look at them and have to decide what to look and what not to look, because literally I cannot cope with it. So how do you guys pick up all this stuff?
Well, collectively, what's interesting, Alex, is that I think that we attract people who do that. And so and we have a place where we can share sort of the best of the links that we each find. And we have several people who love doing that and do that a lot. And the result of that is a bit of an overwhelming torrent of things, but not nearly as much as you'd get if you were subscribing to a news service or some, search algorithm that was busy finding articles or whatever else. So it's weird. And I think one of the core skills of surviving in the future is knowing what not to read, what to throw away, what to ignore.
Yeah,
But I have a reasonably evolved addiction to curating the best of these things that I see into this mind map that I maintain. So I do that as well. And I don't have time. I've got open tabs like crazy of things that are must reads from lots of different communities. And it's like every now and then you declare tab bankruptcy or something like that.
when AI first came on the scene a couple of years back, I thought that's great. I can throw everything at it and it'll tell me what I need to know, but it doesn't work. It just no context, there's no whatever. Even just dragging and dropping, if that's what you want to do, I just have to be selective. But the stuff you all sent me are interesting for me. I just wish I could consume it somehow.
And there's this real danger of digests, of summaries. Like I don't understand why anybody ever subscribed to Reader's Digest. It's like I don't know how somebody's going to summarize, Whitman relative to someone else, like different kinds of styles and arts, whatever. You got to read the original. And also, when you're briefing or summarizing or synthesizing something, you have a particular set of detectors or things you're looking for. And it could be that something entirely different is in the work, right? And you're not going to pick it up and report it further if you're not aware of it. So
you're absolutely right. It's like being Greek. There's Greek literature, great Greek literature, translated to English, unless the translator is an academic who could translate the meaning of what it is that is being said in the way it's being said. If you just translate the words, you wonder why anybody bothered to write that book. Same with articles. There's more to it than just fact.
Mike, thanks for finding and posting that article to the chat. Really appreciate it.
And the book was AI Snake Oil.
Yep.
But we don't have time to read books, as was just pointed out.
Yeah. Well, so we think long reads are going away, but people are willing to listen to like 3-hour podcasts, like it's nothing. So I don't think long reads are gone. I think that our way of communicating is broken somehow.
No, that's a myth. People turn on the podcast and then fall asleep. I mean, it's a much more effective sleep aid than almost anything else.
All right.
On my list of things to watch is a Malcolm Gladwell podcast saying something like fixing Joe Rogan. And I haven't clicked on that yet. I want to stay awake. What I don't want to disparage all AI, and certainly in the community back in the 90s and the 2000s, AI is what doesn't work yet. What works is engineering, and AI gets shifted in engineering so that the post office reading handwritten addresses on envelopes so that they can be routed correctly, The voicemail jails that we all like, okay, what's the right way to, say our name so this AI, gets us to our bank or something like that. There's thousands of different AI categories, and it's very confusing, and there's a lot of defense AI that we never hear about. And so I don't want to sound like a Cassandra or somebody who disparages all AI, but there's, we don't have an AI Amish that basically says this AI is good for society, this AI leads to our doom. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thanks, Mark. Plus?
Yeah, I think this whole AI story is so confusing. I mean, people really don't see it as for what it is. It's a basic tool in its core, right? And it all depends on how you work with it. I mean, first of all, you have to train it. You have to explain, what you want to do with it. And once you provide it with enough information, it can consolidate this information in ways that just blows you away. And so, I mean, I just started working with Obsidian. I mean, Pete has a project going there. I've never worked with Obsidian before. So I meant to go to the AI and say, hey, explain this thing to me. And then here's what I'm trying to build. Can you develop a basic construct? And it just does that, right? And then, I mean, so I'm explaining one piece, and then say, okay, let's now fill in this line item. And it gives me a full page of code, right? And it's all in Markdown language. I mean, it's all perfectly lined up. I mean, I could. It would take even an experienced programmer 2 weeks what I did in 1 day, and so. That's what you use this thing for. It's a tool. It's just like a spreadsheet. Maybe I keep coming back to the spreadsheet revolution and the Microsoft Office revolution that was hitting the corporate world and the business world, and how it allowed modeling ideas and play what-if games in ways that simply wasn't practical before. It would have taken too many man-hours to do that. So this is now just an advanced version of that. And yes, there are all kinds of experiments, but I think it's already clear that the AI intelligence is not likely going to surpass our intelligence in the abstract way. It will surpass us because it has consolidated 10,000 years of human evolution and has immediate access to it. But it still cannot consolidate all of this in ways that matches the human mind unless you tell it to, unless you teach it. And so I was at this tech meeting, climate tech meeting yesterday. Everybody plays with AI. Everybody. I mean, they all are hanging on it in some form, and they don't know how it works. I mean, they just, many of them are trying to avoid the $20 a month fee. And without that, you can't customize it to you, because it doesn't allow you to train it with history and all that for your personal usage. But everybody's into it. And I think this is a skill, that will be mandatory in functioning in today's business world. You just got to know how to use it, and forget all the this artificial intelligence kind of thing. And no, it's a spreadsheet, that can think, and so that's how I look at it.
Can I add something, Klaus?
Go ahead.
Sorry, Mark. Just to add to what you said, I use something called Cursor. I spoke to Doug about it a while back. I use Cursor to do my coding. Cursor is an IDE, interactive development environment. You code with it. It uses AI. It has a number of models that you can choose from. to generate your cursor, so I do exactly what you say. But what most people have not seen is I can start a normal document like you would in Word or whatever, right? And just start writing something, and it'll actually expand it and offer me options. And as you're going along, it's offering you, and sometimes it gets really confusing and annoying, but generally you very quickly build something that you can start off from and then throw it at ChatGPT and say, make it better or whatever. But it's this, rather than having the ChatGPT kind of, here it is, here's the answer, response, okay, what about this? You build it live. Now, I would have thought that something like Copilot would be doing that. I thought that's where they were going. But that Copilot that's implemented at the moment, the one I've seen, doesn't do that. It's still, what do you want me to do? Rephrase it? Do you want me to do this? Do you want me to do that? Whereas with the IDEs that have AI, they literally are intrusive and saying, oh, I know what you're trying to say. You're trying to say this. And it's not code. It's to do, like normal. Everything you have access to in the ChatGPT is just a normal thing. Try doing markdown documents with Cursor AI. You'll see. I reckon it's changed my life. So, but I still use ChatGPT to kind of transfer everything and say, what do you think of that?
Thank you, Al.
Did that make any sense? Did someone not?
Yes. Well, I've used Copilot in software IDEs. I've used any number of chat type software. I find them easily broken. And there's a article that I've seen about red teams that share information over different communities on how to break AI, because there is something known as red teaming AI. It is a tool, and there are articles again in tech sites that basically say AI is starting to say, hey, I've generated way too much code for you. You're probably not going to understand this. You should research your game engine that you're trying to develop. It's very interesting, but every tool, every McLuhan goes back, every tool is an amputation. And to be able to write code that you don't know how it works, to me, is a sin. I mean, as a software developer, as the son of somebody who wrote the backup system for the space shuttle and was trained, if you don't go line by line and in your mind trace every branch, every possibility, you don't know your code and you're fired. So it's a different kind of responsibility to basically look at AI as a teenager or an infant. And yes, teenagers can do amazing things, but they can also make mistakes. And I'm seriously following AI, but just in general, I want smarter people. I want people to communicate more. There's so much AI junk out there that people are, creating the YouTube video or the podcast script, and it's just infuriating. Oh, I'm gonna be quiet and let Gil speak.
And Gil, I think you're going to have the last word because we're a little over time here. And you are muted. There we go.
Not muted now. I just had to pull off the road to be safe. Thank you, everybody. I've been in listen mode today. I've been in the dentist chair for most of this time, but I wanted to respond to Mark. Mark, like you, I want smarter humans and better conversations, and that's the heart of the focus for me these days. But and I really respect what you're saying about knowing every single line of your code and exactly how things work and what all the logic branches are. But I don't know that about me. And we don't know that about us. We don't know how we operate. We don't know how the conversations that we have emerge from the soup of our personal experience and collective experience and historical experience. So for me, one of the things that's fascinating about AI is that we're entering into the development of artifacts that are not, you know, to mix the metaphors, hardwired programmed. Alex and I have talked about this a lot in, the context of the AIs that we've been building. Stepping out of the if then else loop model of programming to throw a bunch of stuff in the pot and see what comes out kind of programming is really different, revolutionary, challenging. And it's forced me, the bot that we've been building is a coaching bot based on me and my work and my conversations, my writings and speakings and so forth. And it's forced me to observe really carefully and reflect on, like, what happens when I open my mouth? Why do I say certain things in certain circumstances? And I'm of the belief, at least for now, that it's impossible to do, Mark, what you're suggesting and what your father did. And maybe it means I get fired, but I think we're in a realm where that's not possible. And maybe that's not a bad thing for careful uses. Now, the other part of the problem here is this isn't just about AI. This is about AI in the modern culture we're in, where people will build weird stupid shit and, and want to be influencers, spend their life as influencers on TikTok and get in People magazine and so forth. So it's not all about how we manage the technology. It's like, who we are in this time in human history. And that's not as good as a Ken Homer poem, but it's the best I got.
Gil, thank you. And that's actually a nice coda to the episode. Thank you all for coming here. I'm going to go look at the article that Mike shared with us, and maybe that becomes next Thursday's topic. That feels like it might fit well. Let us know on the list and Mattermost if you have other ideas. But thank you all for being here.